So with this sort of recent trend in low lead arm, and you've been from Philadelphia as well, so you've got better experience with this than myself and being around this. Do you think the right way to go is both hands high for the shoulder roll Philly shell as a base guard, or do you think people? Because if you look at the best boxers of all time, top 10 list, for example, most of the guys are American fighters, and most of these guys had that low lead hand. So now people, rightly so, are saying we're going to copy the best fighters of all time, low lead hand, right hand under the chin. That's going to be our base stance. Not knowing that most of these guys probably did start off with the amateur style with the hands high. So what's your view on this? Do you start off both hands high, lead hand low?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm a both hands high guy. Let me explain why. I think the shoulder roll as a whole is getting a lot of guys into trouble that that they can avoid. I don't think people understand. You do, but the average person don't. The ability, we talk about these freak athletic guys, the ability to be able to flip and roll. Why do you think this style wasn't really used as much in the 80s? It was sprinkled. It wasn't like how it is now. And Floyd helped take it to another level, which is funny because he didn't even use it all that frequently as people make it out to be. Like what I just talked about, when he got into trouble, he earmuffed up and walked you down. But people seem to forget this stuff, but whatever. But they want to glamorize the shoulder roll, which is funny. People don't realize this, but that term Philly shell actually came from a video game. The term came from, I believe, Fight Night. I don't know the name of the game. Now, the rolling and slipping punches, as you know, Georgie Benton is one of the guys, one of the, pioneers of that style, and a bunch of other guys who they'll never get credit for, amateur guys out of here that really didn't have strong pro careers, but they all used to use this particular style. And it wasn't called the Philly shell then. That's a pop culture term that came about. I'm going to say in the last 20 years, but I didn't never hear that term Philly shell when I grew up. I never heard of it. I heard of the shoulder roll. I heard of slipping punches, in the roll, but I just heard roll, the term roll. I never heard, and somebody can correct me, that's from Philly. I grew up in Philly my entire life and been around gyms, watched this sport. I never, ever heard the term Philly shell until the 21st century, and so Floyd became, when James Toney fought, I never heard nobody use that term. You correct me if I'm wrong. Have you ever, when
you're totally right. I could even remember Marvin Hagler talking about it when James Toney's fighting Mike McCallum, and he said he has an old school stance. He didn't call it a Philly shell. He just called it an old school stance.
Yeah. When I got on YouTube, I'm gonna be honest. Some guy from over where you were at said it to me. He was like, the Philly shell, and I was like, what the hell is that? And it was like, and then as the time went on, I started hearing it, the announcers, how it is. We get these buzzwords and nobody fact checked anything and they just kind of run with it. So, not that I'm not taking anything away from it. So anyways, just get back onto your point. I'm just a big fan of keeping your hands high. I just think that guys, and they all try to use, it's just funny, the low hold, hand under the chin. I've seen so many guys get knocked out, and I don't want to pick on this guy, right? There was a fighter by the name of Edner Cherry. A good evening parting joke for you. Edner Cherry was fighting on the undercard. Don't ask me what fight it was because I don't remember. I know it was either in Atlantic City or I was somewhere in Philly. I was at it was a lower tier fight, but he was on the undercard. There was a guy next to me, thought he was Floyd Mayweather. Older gentleman. He was like, is that? And man, at this time, Floyd was just kind of coming into his own. And when he said it, I said, you know what? He's actually not that far off because he is fighting in the same stance like Floyd. Had his chin tucked, low hand. Like, it was just funny because if you didn't know about boxing, he kind of almost looked like Floyd a little bit from a distance. And I'm just like, and look, this is no diss to Edner Cherry, but I'm like, he has no business in this stance. I think I think he might have got stopped in that fight because you're not really hiding. You're more so exposing yourself in the roll if you're not rolling properly with the shoulder roll. I saw Shakur Stevenson use the roll for the first time in a very long time. I think it was in the Oscar Valdez fight. You know when he did it? When he got trapped on the ropes. It was the only time he used it.
Which was how it was sort of developed in Philadelphia.
Isn't it that's how it's supposed to be done? So when he was in the middle of the ring, he didn't use it because now James Toney for Michael Nunn in the middle of the ring rolling. But this is James Toney. Like, so I think that we've gotten so enamored with this particular stance. And I watch videos and clips, and I'm just like, it's cringeworthy for me because I know what's going to happen. I know how the story ends. I just don't I don't think people understand how difficult it is to fight in that stance if you're not equipped to do it.
Yeah, I think it's the sign of the times, isn't it? In the 1950s, we had like a load of boxers that also wanted to be like Sugar Robinson. You know, you had Johnny Bratton, was it Saxton as well, Billy Arnold. They all wanted to be Sugar Robinson. They all looked like Sugar Robinson. And then you had 60s and 70s. Everyone wanted to fight like Muhammad Ali. And in the 80s, Mike Tyson was the most popular boxer. Everyone wanted to do peekaboo. Even now, if you go to a gym, there's a short, stocky guy. He wants to fight peekaboo. I haven't got a clue how to teach peekaboo.
David Tua was
basically
trained to fight like Mike Tyson. This is like the same style.
Yeah. And now Mayweather being the most popular fighter. Everyone wants to fight like Mayweather.
Mayweather has popularized boxing and made it mainstream again to the point where you have middle-aged women in parks doing mitt work.
Yeah.
I've seen it.
Wow. So have I. Yeah, you're correct. Crazy. But you know, because like James Toney, I mean, I grew up watching James Toney fight. No one used to talk about him having a Philly show, like you said, or shoulder roll, or wanting to fight like James Toney. Really,
I would challenge anybody to show me, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, and you can put this on your show. I would challenge anybody to show me an old school video from the 90s on down where they used the term Philly shell in a fight.
I'm with you. I can't think of it.
If somebody can prove it, then I'll shut up, and I'll have no problem with saying I was wrong. But again, I can only go by the information that I was privy to. I grew up in the city. I'm not a transplant. I didn't move here from nowhere else. My zip code was 1915 my whole life, and I grew up here in the city, and I never heard that term until later when I started a boxing blog on YouTube. A guy that was posting something that I posted said, "Oh, he was using the Philly shell," and then I learned later that it came from a video game. That term. I hope those dudes are getting paid for publishing. Like, that's crazy. It's a dope name. I gotta it's a dope name.
Yeah,
but I just
say more catchy than the Detroit Rock, which is supposed to be another variation of the shoulder roll.
No, nobody that the Philly shell is. Look, Andre Ward. We just talked about him. We can probably count on both hands how many times Andre Ward used that defense, that style. Bernard is from Philly, so he used, and it's very too. That's another thing we can get in. This is like such a lengthy discussion. It's variations of rolling too, because Bernard a lot of time uses shoulder as a lead off, so it's different variations of it, so.
Yeah, I mean, we just mentioned discussing the Philly shell, but then we just mentioned about Howard Johnson being the most technical fighter of all time, which is totally opposite to the Philly shell. So there's a lot of variation in Philadelphia as well. And Bernard Hopkins, yeah, I mean, would you say he used? Yeah, would you say Bernard Hopkins used the shell?
It's variations of it, but not like traditionally speaking of it. No, not really.
Yeah, I mean, when you're fighting, 20 odd years, you're bound to have used it every now and then. But not as a base style.
No, it's not a go-to. It's not a Bernard first of all, Bernard defense is I'm gonna crowd the hell out of you and I'm going to grab you. And I'm gonna tell the referee that you're holding me.
Well, whilst I headbutt you.
Steve Smoker said Bernard Hopkins was the most difficult guy to referee because you didn't know if he was holding the guy or the guy was holding him. If he wasn't in the right position.
Yeah, very, very smart fighter, wasn't he?
Smart as hell. Yeah.
You got to give him credit for that. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's an interesting one about the the low lead hand.
Yeah.
I'm with you as well in this one. I think you have to learn both hands high because, like the same words Saif Carmen said, it's irresponsible as a coach almost, or someone new comes into your gym, never boxed before, you teach them a low lead hand style because they're not going to be safe.
Yeah. I've always been a
different.
Yeah, everybody, listen, I'm not, philosophies in the sport, every style is worked in boxing. Again, I go back to two things can be true because we live in a society now where you have to pick one over the other. Like, I don't know why it's that way, but two things can be true at the same time. I'm not saying that one is different, is better than, I'm just saying, me personally, that's the style
exactly. That's what I'm saying. But at the same time, like Saif Karma said, you could, if the guy goes into sparring and you see he has that natural innate ability which we've discussed to make people miss, then yeah, by all means you could say, oh, maybe you can get away with keeping your hand low. But most guys cannot do that. They have to keep their hands high. You always want to get the odd guy in the gym you can teach hand low because he's a bit more slippery and he's better reflexes than the others.
Guys that are slippery and reflex, you can see it as soon as they come in.
Yeah,
like
exactly. You see him in sparring. You teach them hands high. You see him in sparring. If you find their hands low and they manage to make people miss, all right, you can roll with it. But 90%, 99% are not going to be able to do that. The shoulder roll, going back to like Roy Jones being athletic, the shoulder roll tends to be a style I think which suits the more athletic type of fighter, keeping that lead hand low, because you put yourself in harm's way almost, don't you? I know the guys Philly use the under the chin and catch and pick punches with the rear hand. So you sort of make up for the lead hand being low by picking shots with the rear hand. But it's an interesting topic.